Good afternoon. I'm Paul Skydam. I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Development Alliance of Lincoln County. And co-presenting with me today is, whoops, that way.
Sarah Budding, project manager here at EDALC. Very happy to help out and thank you guys all for coming today.
And we are a 501c6 nonprofit economic development organization serving all of Lincoln County. And for the past 15 years, our organization has administered and managed this grant program. The funds come from Lincoln County. The official funding decisions come from the Lincoln County commissioners, but we basically run the grant program. Our board of directors scores the grants and recommends funding. We, Sarah and I, or no one else on the staff, we don't have a say in the scoring. Our job is to be advocates for you. So that's why we're doing this workshop today. So I'm going to kind of kick us off here with some fancy pictures. Sarah, can you give a thumbs up if you can see that? Okay. So as I said, this is the Community Economic Development Grant Program Grant Applicants Workshop. If that's not what you're here to see, well, it's going to be that exciting, so you'll probably want to stick around. And as I said, we're a 501c6 economic development organization. One cool thing is this year we celebrated our 30th birthday. We've been serving Lincoln County for 30 years as a nonprofit. I have the honor of being only the third executive director here. So that's pretty cool. And if you just got here, if you would please in the chat put your name, organization, and email. That way everybody can see who's here and if they want to reach out, and it'll give us a record of who was here as well as far as getting a little bump and bonus on your grant applications. We got someone else coming in. Okay. Oopsie. Oops. All right. So just a quick overview of the agenda, and Sarah and I will be tag teaming here, but we'll kind of go over the high level and eligibility and rules overview. All of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, we're going to put links to the documents that go into much more detail in the chat as we go along. And also Sarah's going to put in the link to the page on the county's website that's got everything on it. So there's multiple ways you can get this info, but we're going to go over the eligibility and rules, the timeline for the program, talk a little bit about the difference between impact grants and standard grants, the scoring review, how things are scored, and things are a little bit different. There's some different bonuses and some things that are not being bonused this go round. We'll talk about some grant application tips. A lot of you have already written numerous grants, and so might be a little bit of a review, but we try to sort of spin this towards what our board of directors who score this, what they want to see. And then we got a couple other little tips for this grant, and it says tips for applying with Smartsheet. It's not actually Smartsheet, it's the Form Center, and we'll kind of go over that and how to use that because it's the first time that tool has been used for this particular grant program. So let's talk about key requirements and rules. And Sarah, if you want to throw up the link up there. But basically, this grant program is the applicants must be a governmental unit or a registered nonprofit. So they could be, if you're a nonprofit, you could be a C3, C4, C6, or a co-op. Governmental unit could be something like a port or a school district or something like that, basically a taxing entity. Oregon Coast Community College is another example. Public-private partnerships are encouraged with the nonprofit is the applicant and the fiscal agent for that. We don't get too many of those, but that's something we'd like to see a little bit more of in the future, just to be able to kind of create some more synergies out there. Only one application per organization per year. And an organization or a governmental unit, you can only receive an award every other year. And that it came from the commissioners, and they just want to kind of mix it up to make sure as many people as possible, as many organizations can have an opportunity to receive grant funds. And if you're a nonprofit, you must be in good standing with the IRS and the state. And a couple other requirements. No applicant organization can owe back taxes to Lincoln County. Usually that's not a problem at all. Organizations that currently receive direct contracted funding from Lincoln County are ineligible. And I'm going to try to clarify that here because sometimes that causes a couple questions. If you have a contract with Lincoln County to provide a service, for example, Lincoln County Housing Authority has some contracts with Lincoln County. That's different than this. This is basically for if you're receiving operational funds from the county. So there's also no allowed expenditures for the grant prior to receiving the award letter. You can't just sort of be back compensated. For organizations that are larger than Lincoln County, that have their foot in many different regions, the grant awards must be fully spent in Lincoln County for Lincoln County programs and results. So it's okay if you serve multiple counties. It's just this grant is for Lincoln County. No grant funds can be used for operational or staffing expenses, but I would say there's a little asterisk there. Not really an asterisk, but you can use grant funds to hire a consultant. For example, I think a couple years back, Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce had a really cool program where they could provide website development for members of the chamber. That was being done through a consultant. They were able to use the grant funds to pay that consultant. Totally cool. And also the chief executive of the organization must endorse the application. There's sort of a thing in the application where you sort of check that happened, and then we'll just reach out and check. It's, you know, we're small, we're rural. We just ask. We just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is going on. All right, Sarah, take it away on the timeline.
Yes. First, I'll be putting in the chat the overview page that's on the county website. And so this will have all of the links to the other stuff and everything else I'll be sharing today. And like Paul said, I'll be sharing the links to all these pages as we go. And then at the end, I'm going to share the full list in bulk. So if you miss it, don't worry, it'll come back again. So as far as the timeline, the grants are due by 5 p.m. Pacific time on Monday, November 18th. Like Paul said, they can be submitted through the county's form system that's on their webpage. We'll also be sharing a link to that. If you have any difficulties with preparing your application or submitting it at all, please reach out to me. If you have any issues when that happens, or like if you have a PDF that you are trying to submit that's connected to it and for some reason it doesn't load, then be sure to email me. It's not the end of the world.
It's been a pleasure having you.
And if someone's not muted, if you could mute your mic, there's really getting some background sounds out there. Sounds interesting, but
you did. Yeah, well, I wish I could.
Can you mute them? Sarah, do you have the host?
What? Can I? Let's see. I am. Hold on. Let me do a quick stop share here, and I will find out who.
Perfect. Okay. I think everybody can probably hear me a bit clearer now.
Okay. Back at it.
All right, back where I was saying. So if you have any issues when you're submitting, I mean, beforehand or on the 18th, because a lot of people do submit these on the deadline day, which is totally cool. But if for some reason your PDF doesn't attach or something goes wrong with it, totally don't freak out. Just email me. My email is Sarah, SARAH, at businesslincolncounty.com. Or you can call the EDOC office and we'll be here and we can help kind of walk you through that and make sure that everything you want to be submitted will be submitted. And if you are watching the recording of this workshop in the future for other people, you have until the grant application deadline to fill out the Google form attached to the workshop in order to receive bonus points for being at this workshop. So the EDALC Board of Directors will review and score the grants over the next couple weeks, and then they will put their combined scores together and present their gather their recommendations on December 5th, EDALC's board meeting. And then after that meeting, Paul will present EDALC board's recommendations to the county commissioners at the next possible county commissioner meeting. And at that meeting, the Board of Commissioners will kind of discuss what the EDALC board came up with, and then we'll vote to either approve the funding, make some tweaks, and basically inform the county staff on what their award decisions have been at that point. And so the notifications and contracts will be prepared by the county staff, and the awardees will be notified sometime in probably February to March is when you can expect it. And after you become awarded, a final report of the grant project's results is required 1 year from the date that it's received, and that also can be done through the county's reporting portal, and all of that information will be shared if you're a grant awardee with the reporting requirements and information when you are chosen by the county. But yeah, due date's in about 2 weeks. So yeah.
And one kind of funny story, this was maybe 4 years back, you heard Sarah say Pacific time. There was a third-party firm that actually was managing the grant portal, and no one bothered to check, and they closed it down on Eastern time, 5 o'clock on Eastern time. And there were a number of people in there attempting to cram their grants in. We got it sorted out, but we're all good here. I also looked back over my notes, and there was one other important kind of rule change, which is different this year from the past years. It's in the documentation that you've got, but I just wanted to call it out. If an organization, if one of you has received a past award, you need to have submitted your final report for that award before you can apply for this. And if you have any questions about that, or you're not sure if you have or not, just email me at paul@businesslincolncounty.com, and we can make sure on that, because we've got the list of all of those. So just wanted to let you know about that. Okay, so standard grants and impact grants. This has been sort of the approach for the last couple of years. It's a pretty cool way to go. But basically, there is, for this fiscal year, there's $130,000 in this grant pool. 70,000 of that goes for what we call standard grant projects, which are grant projects of $15,000 or less going to a single organization. And then there is the ability to apply for a single $60,000 impact grant project. And you can apply to one or the other, but you can't apply to both. Now, in past years, there have been some specific subjects that the commissioners wanted to see some investment in, or some projects in, that had some score or some score bumps. That was housing, childcare, broadband. So for this year, since there's so much funding coming in through other sources for broadband, that's not a priority for impact grant projects. Housing, since there's also a lot going on and the county's got a housing effort happening, that is not a desired category here, but there is still a small points bonus if you are putting together a project that addresses issues of Lincoln County childcare. That is still seen as a priority. The county had some childcare grant monies that were expended, so they want to still see that priority here for the impact grants. Again, that is only for the impact grants. And the other thing that I will say right now is that keyword 1 is xenomorph. Why am I saying that? Because if you're watching this recording later on, you get quizzed on what those keywords are, so we can tell that you actually saw this presentation. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about scoring here. And the the grant overview document. And if Sarah, if you could just be the one who posts the documents in there, because my chat window has vanished since I'm sharing. Okay, thumbs up. The overview document basically goes over every single item that's in the application and how that's scored. But I'm going to hit some points here. Our job as staff, Sarah and I, is to help you submit the best application possible. So if there's questions you've got along the way, let us know. Our board of directors score the applications and make the funding recommendations. One of the things that is probably the most, I guess, desired from our board of directors viewpoint is to be able to show that your application is in the realm of economic development. This is a community and economic development grant program, but it definitely favors economic development. So if you're doing something for an event, talk about the people that you're going to bring into the community, the dollars they're going to spend, things like that. And also, as far as our board, things that they like to look at is they like to see economic development projects that are collaborative in nature, that have multiple organizations working together and also have the potential for multiple funding sources. In a perfect world, these grant funds, while there's not a match required, they would like to see the dollars be as impactful as possible. So there's a couple score bonuses that you see outlined in the program overview, and one of those is attending this workshop. If you're attending here as a human being or as an artificial intelligence today, you get a little bit larger score bonus. If you watch the recording and correctly answer the keyword questions, you'll get a slightly smaller score bonus. There's also a new bonus this year that if the project takes place within an unincorporated area of Lincoln County, there's a slight score bonus for that as well. What's gone this year is last year there was a bonus if you attended a nonprofit workshop that the county held. They're not doing that this year, so that's gone. Last year there was a green project bonus, but right now that's basically just in the general requirements that they want to see projects that are environmentally sound, but there is no bonus specifically for green or not green, just because that was kind of hard to sort of really figure out what's more green than the other. And as I mentioned before, that the broadband and housing bonus for impact projects is also gone this year, but still remaining for childcare. All right, well, what I'll do is turn it over to Sarah to kind of talk through a few grants application tips and to help you maximize that. And then we'll look at some other documents to get things going, and then we'll kind of get rolling. Sarah?
Yeah, so I just posted in the chat a little document that we did not develop, but we got from an awesome grant writer and scorer out of Idaho Department Chamber of Commerce that we like to share. And it's also on our EDALC grant resources page all year, so you can always reference it. And like Paul said, some of you might have a lot of experience doing grant writing, so this might be kind of just a reminder, or hopefully you find it helpful. But I just kind of wanted to call out a couple important parts of that form just to kind of highlight putting the best application forward for this specific application. The first one was developing good projects. It's important to remember the quote, "We fund projects, not ideas." The county commissioners really want these grants to go to projects that create or retain jobs. As Paul was saying, they really like that tangible economic development piece that they can point to, but they also want to give some funding to community development projects, and especially ones that address a specific need in the county right now. So always try to keep that need and goal in mind when you're developing that your project. And at each phase, ask yourself, how does this task directly address the need or goal that we're presenting? How does this task or project improve the county economically, socially, environmentally, culturally? Any of those things are very valuable things to point out. It's just good to always bring it back to that original need or economic impact that you want to have. And in addition, any supporting data regarding what that need or the economic impacts that you think you're going to have, that this project's going to have, attach those documents to the end of the application. Any type of references that you can have and quantify or legitimate your need, it's very helpful. Another one is on that sheet is number 9. It's a good project description will tell the reviewers what, where, why, when, how, and how much is important too. And it will be done in very plain English. The reviewer should be able to understand your project description, even if they've never heard of your organization before. And so it's hard. We have a lot in our organization, but try to avoid industry jargon, technical language that we all use in our organizations that we think everyone knows, but don't assume that they know. And so if you can, it's actually really helpful to have someone from outside your organization read at least your project description and then ask them if it was readable, and also kind of ask them what they took out of it. I mean, did they interpret it the way that you wanted your project and impact to be presented? So if you can do that, it's a really good way to check to make sure the average person will be able to understand what you're trying to do. And the stronger the language, the better. And as always, for economic developers, anytime you can quantify that need or impact or any type of numbers you can associate with your project, the better and clearer it'll come across. And lastly, on that note, number 10, triple, quadruple check your numbers. Make sure that your budget is very clear, and also that you reference numbers or costs related to your project anywhere else in your section of your application. Triple check that matches up with the numbers that you put in your budget. It's important that everything matches throughout each piece. And also, if you can have someone review your budget and make sure it all adds up correctly, that's also a really great thing to do. Your budgets are scored on viability and completeness. So keep that in mind when you're putting it together. And as Paul said, include any other funding sources that you have or are even expecting to have for this project. It's very good to include those in your budget. So I encourage you guys to utilize this document or just kind of run it through when you're going through your application process. And also on EDALC's grant resources page, which I'll have the link to at the end, there's other resource lists for Oregon nonprofits for helpful stuff as far as how to apply for things like this and putting your best application forward. And on that note, keyword 2 is Nostromo. Nostromo. And Paul, back to you.
All right. And Sarah's going to stick in the chat a link to our in-house developed scream sheet document, basically a 1-pager or a 2-pager with some tips that we've put together as staff as we're seeing things go through. It kind of goes in concert with what Sarah was saying, but a couple things that I'm going to kind of point out is that your project narrative should not be very long. It should be very, very concise. Make sure that you tell a good story. And in that story, outline the real need for this grant, this project. Another thing that I think is really important, and also know that sometimes our board of directors might not know your organization. Differentiate yourself. Be able to talk about who you are and what differentiates your organization and your efforts. But we don't need a huge long thing of like, here's the 37 things that we've done over the past 20 years. Just be hard hitting on that. And I'll just reiterate again, have an external source or someone else in your team review the budget. And one of the things that I think is important is if your budget has optimally, like, just say you're looking at getting funding from 3 different sources, one of them this grant program. You don't necessarily you don't have to have those other funds in hand to do this application or have this application be evaluated, but make it very clear where those other sources, you hope where those sources of funds are coming from, so that basically you want an application that doesn't raise questions, it explains things, and just kind of be clear there. And then the next thing that we want to look at is what's different this year is that we're doing the applications in the Lincoln County's website, their Civic Engage Form Center. If you've applied for social service grants, this is the form that's been used for the last 2 years for that. And one other thing I would like to point out, remember we talked about you can only get this grant every other year. There's no problem in getting this grant and a social services grant in the same year. That's totally fine. They're separate pots and separate reviewers and all that. But one of the things that's kind of cool over with this form center is that you can now save your work. If you go to the application and you haven't been there before, it'll ask you and prompt you to create an account. Basically just like everything else, email, password, all that jazz. But that allows you to save your work. So that is huge, because last couple of years you had to do your application in one sitting. I still would recommend using a word processor to write out your application. Go to the application, look it over, look at the different areas. It's also the same as on the grant overview document, so you see what you got to write about. But do that in a word processor, because then you get the grammar checking, spell checking, all of that. But one tip that I would use is once you have things ready to submit, open up something that's a text editor. If you're using a Mac, that's like TextEdit. If you're on a Windows system, that's Notepad. And then paste your text from the word processor into the text document, and then copy it from there and paste it into the web form. That strips out all formatting and just makes it so that there's not extra crap in your document. And it will just make it so you don't have to stress it a lot. Do your budget in Excel or some other table-based thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be Excel, but it should be exported as an easy-to-read PDF document. And if you are doing an impact grant, you are required to have at least one letter of support. You can have multiple letters of support. But if you're doing that, combine all your letters of support into a single additional PDF. And there's spots for you to upload both your budget PDF and your letters of support PDF. Standard grants do not require a letter of support. You can always submit one, but they are not required at all. And right now, we're just going to kind of go, and I'm going to stop sharing, and we've kind of blasted through a whole ton of information. And I would want to see if anyone had any questions, comments, anything that they want to share, anything that we can help. We're here for you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, you may, Tom.
Early on, you said ineligible if the organization has a contract with Lincoln County receiving operational funds. The Waldport Chamber of Commerce has a contract with Lincoln County. And the funding is specific to tourism, promotions, and I'm not sure if that disqualifies us, because obviously those funds are helping us with our operations to fulfill those parts of the agreement. So I'm not sure if we're eligible.
Why don't you reach out to me via email, and I'll bird dog that specific answer down for the Waldport Chamber, just to make sure, and we will fight and advocate for you. But it's really the commissioners and what they decide. But touch base with me, and I'll get that information.
Thank you. The second part of this is we may be applying on behalf of the city of Waldport for the Lewis Southworth Park development and playground. The city of Walport has a 501c3, but I'm assuming the city of Walport also receives operational funds from Lincoln County.
I'm not sure if they do, but
I don't know.
because most
Okay.
municipalities don't. But yeah, let's talk offline, and
Okay.
we'll kind of get you the answers you need.
Thanks, Paul.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Kim in the chat had a question. Is there a way to see previously funded projects? We do on our EDALC grant resources page have, if you scroll down to like the third little section in there, we have a list of everyone who received awards last year. And then I believe the previous 2 years before that are also listed on the Lincoln County page. If you just search community and economic development grant, they usually have a page for the last few years that should have all of them. But I put in the chat again the link to our EDALC grant resources page, and if you scroll down to like the third section, it'll have everyone who won grants last year.
And Kim, if you want any more, like if you want us to go further back than that, just shoot Sarah and I an email, and we'd be happy to dig out those what got funded. Because I know sometimes it's helpful to kind of kickstart your idea of what the possibility space is. What happens if you can't get your project funded and completed within a year? That's happened to numerous different awardees. And generally, I would recommend that for the grant application, be as confident as you can that it's going to be funded and implemented. But usually the commissioners are pretty good, and we will talk to them on your behalf as far as like if you need an extension on grant reporting and wrapping things up. That was the case with the Art and Economic Prosperity 6 project that the OCCA had. Also the Pioneer Telephone Cooperative thing. So there's definitely precedence for it to take a little bit longer. Let's see. Okay. Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. So on the standard grant, it was a $15,000 maximum, right? So yep. Is there a recommendation as to if we wrote a grant for $15,000 to have that be 50% of the project total or a third of the project total? Is there any recommendation in regards to that?
I guess I would say that in general, the commissioners and our board are pretty receptive if there's at least another funding source as part of this project. Again, it does not have to be locked in, and you don't have to have that money in hand, but they want to see that it's not just like you're going to the county for this thing and that's it. As far as, is there a secret formula number, like, 50%? There really isn't. It's more the strength of your project. And sometimes, on occasion, our board might recommend, like, say you ask for $15,000, but there's a number of really strong applications. They might recommend, 13.5 or something like that. They generally don't do a thing where if you ask for 15,000, they're like, okay, you can get 2,500. They usually don't go that crazy. But there may be a little bit of adjustment to try to, if there's numerous really good projects. But I would say if you have the opportunity to collaborate and look at multiple funding sources, that only helps.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? And along the way, if you think of, okay, okay.
You just want me to come off video or come on instead of just typing and driving you crazy.
No, okay, so let's see. I was interested in the playground, so looked at, but SLETs didn't have.
Yeah, so SLETs went right to their website.
Oh, the SLET. Okay, so one of the things that was kind of unusual with the SLETs playground project is there was another grant project that was recommended for funding that it turned out that the county had some ARPA funds that they could fund without this program. So it basically freed up another thing. So that wasn't actually one of the applicants that we submitted to the county. So that's why you got that weird thing.
Thank you.
And I would say along the way, if you think of any questions that you didn't raise today or anything, just reach out to Sarah and I. We are here to help and be advocates for you, and we want to see as many cool projects as possible come forward. Those of you who've received this grant before have done great things with it. I think some of the tweaks over the last 5 years or so have made the grant process a little smoother, and it's also more impactful grants, which is pretty cool. And if this is new, if this is your first rodeo through this, use this as a resource. And if you want some help, because our job is to prepare everything and get it as shiny and slick as possible to get to our board so they can as easily as possible get to yes. Any final comments? All right. Well, look at that. We did pretty good. Gretchen, did you have anything? You were flipping on your camera, or were you just flipping on your camera to do the wave? We appreciate so much your time. Thank you so much for being here. We can't wait to see your projects, and remember, we're here for you. And take care and hit us up if you need anything, and we will see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.